Have you ever been somewhere in nature or in someone's home or an abandoned house or building and felt something there, something intangible, nearby yet unseen? Your mind races, recognizing something is wrong and desperately trying to identify who or what it is, and knowing it wants to do you harm. Well, take a look at this recent experience as shared by one woman who was on holiday with a group of friends. It was an unnaturally hot summer. My friend Heather invited a few of her girlfriends out to her family's cabin in Newfoundland. Heather's family owned a cabin on a little island about 5 hours away from the capital of St. John's. A ferry ran twice a day across the bay to bring you over and take you back to the small community of less than 150 people. She brought 3 of us along that summer, Sarah, Jackie and me. The island where her cabin is located is small, and the community smaller. There aren't a whole lot of people around, and I was told it would be really hard to get lost in the woods because of the size of the place. So it was perfect for exploring. Heather was excited. She knew there were tons of old houses out in the woods, but at that point hadn't been able to go and check them all out. We were planning on staying there for a week. We arrived at the cabin on the Sunday, and on the following Saturday, Heather's parents were coming to stay at the cabin for another week. So we had a lot of time to just relax and swim and sunbathe and eat way too much food. Well, we were a few days into our trip. It was the Wednesday when we were taking a walk through the downtown of the community, if you like. Downtown is a serious exaggeration, actually. It was just where most of the houses are and where the ferry docks. A family friend of Heather's waved us over to his lawn to ask us how things were going. Heather knew this fella well, and they were chatting about family and how the summer was going, all the normal stuff, when Heather mentioned to him that she was interested in exploring the woods a bit. Well, her friend furrowed his brow and warned her that even though the island was small, the woods could be surprisingly easy to get lost in. You watch it now, Heather. You know these woods are teeming with the little people, he said, giving the rest of us a little side wink. Well, Heather laughed at this and patted his shoulder. Dad warned me all about them coming out here when I was a kid. I know all about the fairies, and I also know not a damn one of us has had any trouble with them, so I think we'll be okay, she said. But I'll put a piece of bread in my pocket just in case. I was beyond excited to hear them mention fairies. It's a dying belief here and isn't really taken seriously anymore. It's hard to find anyone who even knows about them these days, let alone anyone who would actually warn us about them. And call them by their old name, the little people. I can guess what you're thinking. Who the hell would be afraid of fairies of all things? But these aren't the cute Tinkerbell fairies with wings and magic dust. The ones around here are a different kind of fairy altogether. And this is something that I would learn the hard way. After Heather said her goodbyes, Jackie asked her what the piece of bread was all about. They say a piece of bread in your pocket keeps you safe from them, Heather replied with a grin. Jackie gave me a side eye. Are you serious? She asked, smiling. Safe from what? You've really never heard of the fairies before? I asked her. Well, they lead you off into the woods and make you lost. They steal your babies and generally just screw you over. Little gnarly old guys who dance around rocks and think it's a fun time to kill your animals and create mischief wherever they can. Jackie rolled her eyes at me. Okay, Miss Paranormal Expert, go get your degree in ghosts already, and she gave me a little playful shove. We reached the top of the hill that overlooked the downtown area and the beach. Heather pointed in the opposite direction and declared, "That's where we're going after lunch, ladies, right into the woods." "Will our phones work out there? You know your way around out there, right?" Sarah asked her, frowning at her iPhone. "I only have one bar right now." But Heather just brushed it off. "No, it probably won't work, but we'll be fine. We won't go so far in that we might get lost. I'll just climb a tree and look for a house. It's not like this place is big." Heather was without doubt the most adventurous and bravest of us all. I could see the excitement buzzing in her. We wouldn't be able to say no to this idea. All of us could see that. So we put on our hiking gear and off we went. The first hour or so was uneventful. We weren't just wandering aimlessly though. There ended up being a labyrinth of old trails and ATV tracks that we could follow. I loved hiking, so I was soaking up all the sounds and smells of the woods. When Heather yelled out to us from further up the path, "You guys, oh man, come here, come and look at this." We rounded the turn and came right up to a house. It was like the trail led right to it. It was old, very old and obviously abandoned, just seemingly sitting right in the middle of the woods with a small, overgrown front lawn that was lined with a fallen down white picket fence. It was a salt box style house. They're extremely common in Newfoundland. At one point in time, basically all the houses looked like this one. The paint was peeling and one of the windows on the top floor was boarded up and the old wooden front door was just hanging off its hinges. "Look at this beauty. We hit the mother lode with this one. There's still stuff inside." Heather could barely contain her excitement as she peered in through the windows. We entered through the open front door and began looking around. The house wasn't big. It had a small sitting room, a dining room and a kitchen on the bottom floor. Old dusty furniture and random knickknacks were still scattered throughout, and wallpaper was peeling from the walls. Jackie and I were looking at some faded, worn-out pictures on the wall when I noticed Sarah was standing awkwardly in the middle of the dining room, biting on her lip. I could tell she was feeling uncomfortable. Heather noticed too and said, "Relax, no one is here, and it's only 2:00. There's tons of sunlight left. Look at all this stuff. This is wild." Then she wandered off to inspect a very large old record player which was set against the wall. "I don't know, I just feel weird in this place," Sarah said. Her eyes were wandering around the room uncomfortably. "That's because it's old as hell and probably about to fall at any moment," Jackie teased her. Heather shot her a disapproving look, but I laughed. Sarah was the most anxious of us all, and I wasn't much better, but I was feeling surprisingly okay. I was too preoccupied, I think, with all the cool old stuff to worry about anything just yet. Then Heather decided she wanted to check out the top floor. "Well, I'm not going up there. Why is it so dark?" Sarah asked as she wrapped her arms around herself and glared up the stairs. "Well, it must be from the boarded up window," I guessed, but I was feeling pretty uncomfortable going up there myself. I can admit to being a wimp just fine. Old houses are creepy, but it was really dark up there. I wasn't interested in seeing any ghosts or falling through the floor. Heather, however, was all about it, and the rest of us reluctantly agreed to follow her up. We timidly climbed the creaky stairs, and at the top there was a room to our left, but the door was jammed, so we went down the short hallway that led to the front of the house. The boarded-up window was at the end of the hallway, but I noticed there was no window at all in the child's room that we'd entered. Heather and Jackie were looking excitedly through a box of toys, talking about all the weird old stuff, while I glanced around the room. It was small, only big enough to have a small toddler-sized bed, a toy box and maybe a bookshelf. "This is too creepy, you guys. I want to leave," Sarah said, her brows all furrowed. Heather pleaded with her to stay. "No, come on, this is so cool. What are you so afraid of? There's no one here but us." Sarah shifted around uncomfortably, admitting defeat, I guess. I think she didn't want to go back downstairs by herself and had hoped that someone would go with her. Then Jackie stopped what she was doing and looked around slowly. "Did you guys hear that?" My heart jumped in my chest. "What?" I asked. "Don't say stuff like that in here, please. Stop freaking us out." "No, seriously," she said and stood up. I thought for sure I heard someone call my name. I didn't know whether to believe her or just assume she was trying to scare us. "I don't know," I said. Then I heard it. Very, very softly, someone called my name. It was so soft and so far away sounding, though, that I wasn't sure I'd heard it at all. I blinked and looked at the others. They were standing still as could be, and I could see fear in Sarah's eyes. "It was my name that time," she whispered. But I started to reply when Heather cut me off. "Nah, you guys, you're just freaking yourselves out. Maybe we should leave before you start convincing yourselves of something that's not there." She was obviously annoyed with us, but I could tell the tone in the room had changed dramatically, and we agreed to leave. When we got outside, I felt almost instantly better. I think the air in there was screwing with us. The place is mouldy and smelly, old places will do that. Jackie stopped me and said, "What the hell? Where is the trail?" I looked ahead, and the trail we came in from was no longer there. It was just thick trees and bushes. I gaped my eyes wide. How is that possible? We were just out here and the trail was right in front of us. Heather laughed nervously. "See, you guys are all freaked out now, and you know that just makes things worse. The trail is there, just hold on." She went over to where the trail was supposed to be and tried to push through the bushes. "It's here, it's just... She trailed off as she frantically pushed through tree limbs and thick brush. My heart sank. I was so confused. The trail was right there. It brought us right up to the house. But as we looked forward from the picket fence, it was like the house was smack dab in the middle of the woods with nothing leading to it at all. Well, Heather came back out of the brush. "It's just woods." "Okay, no one panic yet. Let's look over here." We all followed her around the house and to the backyard. "Look, see, there's a trail. Ha!" Heather exclaimed as she pointed to a gate at the end of the backyard, and sure enough, there was a trail there. We breathed a sigh of relief. I still didn't know what the hell had happened out front, but I decided I shouldn't think too much about it. I didn't want to scare myself more than I already had, and before long I could feel the tension ease a bit and we were joking and laughing just as we had been before. It was then that I took out my phone, wondering what the time was, but to my dismay it was dead. "Oh, damn it, my stupid phone died. What time is it?" I asked the others, stuffing my useless phone back into my pocket. And like a cliche horror movie, Jackie and Heather's phones were somehow dead as well. Well, we chalked it up to bad reception and wonky battery percentages, but I could sense Sarah had tensed up. I didn't even bring mine. Are you guys serious? All your phones are dead? I looked up at the sky and said, "It's okay, Sarah. The sun is still up fairly high. It can't be past 3 o'clock, so we have lots of time to get back." We all agreed on this, but I could tell everyone was feeling uneasy. Being out there with no way to call anyone in an emergency, well, we're the generation that just isn't used to that kind of digital isolation. Not having a phone was making us all very uncomfortable. Discussions turned to other things as we walked, what we were going to eat for supper that night and what we would do the next day, when Jackie shouted, "Oh, look, I think I see a fence up there. Another abandoned house maybe." We hurried up the path to check it out. Falling down white picket fence, peeling white paint on a salt box house with a window boarded up on the top floor and a front door falling off the hinges. "Oh, you have to be kidding me," I said, confused yet again. It was the same damn house. We had walked in a circle for what must have been an hour. But how? We walked in a circle? We couldn't have. Sarah started stammering, but Heather just wrapped an arm around her and kissed her on the cheek. "I know this sucks, but it happens sometimes," she said. "These trails are a maze. We must have somehow got turned around. But we walked straight. We didn't go down any other trails, Heather. How?" Well, Sarah and Heather continued to bicker, but I was too busy staring at the house to pay attention to what they were saying. I squinted and shielded my eyes from the lowering sun. The windows were reflective, but I thought for sure I had seen movement in the upper window. My heart was beating faster than I was comfortable with, and I convinced myself it was a trick of my eyes, but I noticed Jackie staring at the same window, so I walked over to her. "What are you looking at?" I asked her, worried what her reply might be. "I'm losing it, dude. I thought I saw something in the window up there. Something white, like a kid maybe. I don't know. I don't see anything anymore." "Forget it." Jackie turned around and walked back towards Heather and Sarah, and I followed her. "I don't like this, Heather," I said, starting to feel really uneasy. "Don't sweat it. Look, the trail was here the whole time. We must have just not noticed it when we left the first time. The trail in the backyard leads back to the house, which makes sense, so this time we just go down the trail we came from and we'll be back to the cabin in no time." Then Heather attempted to smile. She was still pretty calm, still being silly old Heather, I guess. And I felt better. She was right. The path behind the house would most likely lead back to the property if we weren't paying attention. The woods were just playing tricks on us. The mood was getting more sombre, though. Heather tried to pick up our spirits, but at that point we wanted nothing more than to just get back to the cabin. Heather and Sarah took the lead, paying far more attention to where we were going this time and making sure we weren't getting turned around again. But the sun was getting lower in the sky, and the further we went, the more my stomach knotted. Suddenly, Heather stopped in her tracks and put a finger in the air to signal us to do the same. We stopped. "What?" Sarah asked, frowning. "I thought I heard someone call my name," she said, straining to listen, and we all did the same. "I don't hear," I started to say, but then I heard it. Someone shout out my name. Not too far off like before, though. It was much closer. My heart leapt into my throat. "Who is that? Who out here even knows my name?" Jackie said, looking around. "Hello?" she called out. The rest of us looked confused. "But I heard my name," Sarah said. "No one called your name, Jackie. I heard someone call out Sarah." Well, this was not good. I couldn't hide the fear on my face, and neither could the others. No one said anything. We understood each of us had heard our own name being called. Then I heard it again, like it was someone in the distance, but still close by, call my name. I couldn't tell what direction it was coming from, and it sounded wrong. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, a child or an adult, but it made my hair stand up and my chest flutter. I could see the colour drain from my friends' faces. "Let's go," Heather said, and started to walk briskly down the path again. We tried to catch up to her, but Heather was taller and faster than the rest of us, and soon she was out of sight. "Wait up!" Sarah called out. But a few seconds later we saw that she had stopped on the path again, just ahead of us. That can't be," she stammered. I didn't see it at first, but looking up higher at the tree line, I could see that damn house again. At this point, I didn't think my heart could beat any faster, but it did. How could this be happening? How did we go into a circle again when we were being so careful this time? "What the hell, Heather?" Jackie was yelling. "How did we walk in a circle again?" Heather was just shaking her head. I've never seen her look scared before. Heather was always the level-headed one of all of us, boasting about going on random adventures and never losing her cool, even when she ran into trouble. And I felt at that moment we were in big trouble. We were dead lost, and we would be out here for God only knows how long, with no food and not enough water. At that moment, the fairies came back into my mind, and I believed in that moment that they were very seriously real, and they were screwing with us. I could see Sarah was on the verge of tears, and Heather wrapped her arm around her again and told her it was okay, that we'd find our way home and not to worry. But Jackie and I just stood awkwardly in the path, not knowing what to say or what to do. We didn't want to go near that house again, so we just stood there while Heather calmed Sarah down, and it was starting to get dark. Then she said, "Okay, this time we follow the sun. It's setting. We know if we follow it, we'll be going in one direction and we can't get turned around again." So off we went again. Only this time, none of us said a word. We were scared. We were hungry. And we were just getting really pissed off. It was getting dangerously close to being dark by the time we spotted the house again. This time, Sarah just burst into tears, unable to control herself any longer. I felt the tears stinging my eyes and a hard lump in my throat myself. Jackie began yelling at Heather. "What the hell, Heather? How is this possible? You said we wouldn't get lost. You said it was impossible. You said you would climb a tree if you had to. So climb a tree, Heather. You got us into this." Heather just stood there and took it. "Okay," she said, and started to look for a high and stable tree to climb. Almost all the trees in Newfoundland forests are conifers, pine, spruce and fir trees, not exactly easy to climb. But at that point, Heather was desperate, and she struggled to climb through the dense branches that cracked easily under her weight. Somehow she managed to get near the top, and she looked around. There!" she shouted out, pointing in the opposite direction of the house. "There's a light over that way. I can see it." So she slid down the tree excitedly, and we started to jog in that direction, fighting our way through thick trees and ignoring the cuts that the brush was giving us. I didn't care anymore. I just needed to get away from that house and out of those woods. We stumbled into a clearing, and I heard Sarah moan loudly. I looked up. We were at the back of the house this time. Heather had her hands to her head in disbelief. "That is impossible! Impossible! It was just behind us." I couldn't even think straight. My breathing started to become rapid and uneven. My eyes began to cloud over. How? Repeated in my head. How was this happening? Well, by this point, we were all crying. None of us was able to fight it back any longer. Even Heather had tears streaming down her face as she was trying to calm Sarah down, who was downright sobbing. We sat down in the grass behind the backyard fence, feeling utterly defeated. It was more or less completely dark now, and we'd been in the woods for more than 8 hours by that time. I was so tired. My stomach was in knots and my chest felt tight and painful. None of us knew what to do. Suddenly, Sarah gasped and pointed in front of her. What?" she stammered. My heart flew into my throat and I turned around. At the edge of the clearing, near the side of the house, maybe 20 feet from us, I could barely make out a shape. It was all white, or maybe it was grey, in the shape and size of a small child. It looked like a human, and it was completely naked, but it had no characteristics. Its face was blank, and between its legs was smooth like a doll. Nothing. It was like a completely blank person. It was standing casually with its arm out leaning against a tree when it turned its head to look at us. I heard the others gasp behind me, and then we ran. We got up and we tore right out of there. But it felt like we ran for only a few seconds when I bumped into Heather in front of me. She'd stopped dead in her tracks with her mouth hanging open and her eyes wide. "What?" I started to say, until I realized the house was right in front of us again. My mind buzzed and I felt like I was going to fall over. We weren't alone this time. Making a circle around the house were a large group of these blank people. They were, well, I hesitate to say dancing because it wasn't really dancing. It was more like twitching and shaking. Their limbs looked like they were filled with a liquid as their arms wiggled around their sides. Their legs stomped back and forth as they moved their white, blank bodies. Their heads were shaking and their whole body twitching in a way that made my blood run cold. They looked human, but these were not human movements. Human limbs don't bend or move that way, and they can't jerk around that quickly either. None of us said anything. None of us screamed. We just stood there, transfixed on these creatures, completely unable to process what we were seeing. My whole body felt frozen. My legs were jelly and a scream was trying to escape from my throat, but it just couldn't make it out. Then the creatures all stopped. They stopped and stood perfectly still. And in complete unison, they turned and looked directly at us. Well, that was when we ran. I ran as fast and as hard as I ever have. We ran with tears streaming down our faces until I couldn't feel my legs anymore and my lungs were on fire. I didn't know it was possible that I could even run like that. My mind was blank. The only thing I could focus on was Jackie, who was directly in front of me. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't feel anything. I just ran. It felt like we ran for hours when we reached a clearing and I saw a street light. I burst into sobbing tears. I couldn't control it any longer. My whole body was shaking and I fell to the ground. Jackie held me and we all cried together, sitting in the grass on the side of the road with a beautiful street light shining down on us. We were out. After we'd composed ourselves, we began slowly making our way back to Heather's cabin. We were exhausted. I swear everything hurt. We walked back without saying a word to each other. As we reached the driveway, we noticed the lights were on in the cabin and there was another car in the driveway. It was Heather's parents. They were casually sitting on the back deck, listening to music and drinking beers. Her mum jumped up as soon as we came into sight. "Where were you? My Lord, Heather, what happened to you?" She gasped, looking at us all cut and bruised with puffy eyes. "Wait, what are you guys doing here?" was all Heather managed to say in reply. "You knew we were coming today. Where in the world were you?" "But, Mum," Heather said, "it's only Wednesday." "It's Saturday, Heather. Were you guys out on a bender in the woods? Are you okay? You all look a mess." None of us said a word. We couldn't. If we talked about it then, that meant it was all real. I don't know what happened to those 3 lost days we had in those woods. What I do know is that I was completely wrong about fairies. They are nothing like the old folk tales say. They are not little old guys with pointy hats that prance merrily around rocks or cute little girls with wings. They are so much worse than that. It's been many years now and I still haven't come to terms with what happened. Even writing this has been a struggle. But maybe now, after writing it all down and admitting that it happened, maybe I'll be able to hike through the woods again. Maybe I'll stop hearing my name being called out in the distance. Maybe I'll stop seeing those blank faces staring into my bedroom window at night. Maybe. That is a truly terrifying and life-changing experience. I find myself wondering if those friendships survived the trauma. This is certainly one of the darkest interactions with fairies that I've heard. Not only were they horribly and repeatedly led astray, but then confronted with the sight of not one, but many strange creatures. What did these fairy creatures want with the women? I wonder if they were punishing them for encroaching on their land or their trees. And did they do the same thing to the people who inhabited the house there so long ago? It's fascinating, isn't it? If you've had experiences with fairies in Newfoundland, please share them in the comments. And if you think I've earned it, please give me a thumbs up too. I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, stay curious and be kind. Cheerio!